This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Sour cream and onion, Ruffles potato chips. Folks, welcome to the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
And today we're going to talk about caffeine, but I'm going to let Joe explain what it is that he wants to talk about. This is his idea, and I don't think I could thoroughly explain it with any kind of accuracy.
So, it's funny when we're brainstorming different ideas on things we could talk about. And I was doom scrolling on X, and I found a really funny post, and I thought, well, if this person's this funny, they probably have other funny stuff. So I clicked on their profile, and one of the things that it said was caffeine addict. I'm like, well, that's interesting that someone would take that phrase on their, their public social media profile. But then it really got me to thinking, and as far as like caffeine addict, and I would say I am a connoisseur of caffeinated products and beverages all the way back to when I'd say I was like 12 years old, when I was drinking a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper every day. Not just because I liked the Dr. Pepper, but I was like, I like to get all wired and productive and do all of my chores before 9 a.m. in the morning, mow the back 40, rip through half of a math textbook, listen to most of Pink Floyd's discography, all before lunchtime. Yeah. So it definitely had me making some poor life choices, later. But one of the things as I was thinking of caffeinated products is there's definitely been some instances where I have been way too caffeinated. I don't know. Do you remember the Micro Machine Man from Galoob?
Yeah, the guy that is like talked like 1,000,000 miles an hour.
I think he said it was a Guinness Book of World Records. Yeah, fastest talker. And there have been instances, earlier in my life where I would get like that. And so right when energy drinks first came out, I want to say this is like 1994, 1995-ish. There was a product, there was a black can, about the same size of a Red Bull can, but this is before Red Bull. And in yellow letters on the side of the can, it said XTC.
Okay, ecstasy, got it.
And it was from a bottling company in Liechtenstein.
Okay.
And it tasted like, I remember this like it was yesterday. It tasted like moldy limes. Like you could actually like just picture like mold. Like that's what it tasted like. It was awful. Halfway through that can though, man, I was solving the world's problems, curing cancer. Like I was rolling. And so there was a couple other instances where they, the industry came out with what I guess you could call like convenience store stimulants. And things like, this is about the time that ephedrine really kicked into the marketplace.
Yes. Okay, remember ephedrine, mini thins.
Yeah, so you had mini thins, you had Xenadrin, like GNC was selling a lot of this stuff. Ripped Fuel was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Ripped Fuel.
And then you get into like, gas station nonsense like Black Beauties and Yellow Jackets and...
Yeah, they sold them in those little cellophane pouches, right? Yeah.
So like anytime you go to a gas station or a liquor store, like right by the cash register, you'd see, now where there's the male performance products are up there, but there would be, caffeine capsules. But it was stuff that, say a cup of coffee, I'm making this up, I don't remember the exact figure, but say a cup of coffee has like 15 milligrams of caffeine.
Okay.
I don't know. Where a Yellow Jacket would have 1,000.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm familiar with some of these things. That's for sure. You're talking about the ecstasy drink. My first exposure to an energy drink was probably like Monster, whatever the most popular one was at the time. But I did get my hands on one, and they don't sell it anymore. I think it was called Red Line.
Oh, yes. So I want to hear your story because I also have a Red Line story.
Well, my story is, I don't think it's that interesting. For whatever reason, well, first and foremost, I'm not a big stimulant guy. I do drink coffee in the morning. I mean, I can't live without coffee. But I think in the world of, altering your brain chemistry, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, drugs, or whatever, I think people fall into two categories. They're either people that are more inclined to drift towards the depressants. They might be more of an alcohol drinker or a pothead. And then there are people that will drift more towards the stimulants. And there might be more cocaine or meth or whatever, the stuff that'll pick you up. So I've never been a big stimulant guy. So when these energy drinks were coming out, I wasn't really drawn to them. I drink coffee in the morning. It wakes me up. I guess my day started, but I'm not somebody that, wants to get wired out of my mind and, clean my house with a toothbrush from the ceiling to the floor. You
don't?
No, it's never been my gig. So I did at one point when I bought Red Line, somebody had told me about if you really want an effective energy drink, Red Line is the one to go with. And I saw it in a store, and I think I bought it just to try
real
it.
quick pause. So this person tells you about the product, and that's all they said is if you want to get energized, this is the one to drink. That's all. The only context you had?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I went and I saw it and I bought it, and it did say on the bottle that you only drink half of it. That's like a serving, and then I guess later in the day or whenever the first half wears off, drink the second half. So it was split in two. I remember it specifically said that on the bottle, and I did. I drank half of it, and it got me lit. I was like running around like a maniac.
Well, the dumb part and the reason why I asked, that's the only context they provided you, and they pointed you towards that magical glass door in the convenience store is, being a connoisseur of these types of things and also being dumb at the same time. I did not read the back of said bottle.
Right.
And that bottle is not like a normal size Coke can or
it's a smaller bottle.
It's a smaller like aluminum cylinder is what it is. But I'd say it's about half the size of a soda can.
Yeah.
And so you would think something that tiny, like a 12-hour energy drink type of a thing, you're not, that's not meant to be two portions.
Right.
So I slammed the full thing and then had to run some errands. And man, I remember driving down the freeway. I had my windows down. I was listening to Metallica's Black Album. And all of a sudden, I really hit my bloodstream and my hair felt like it was standing on end. I'm screaming out the window because I thought I was going to just completely lose my mind. I get off the freeway and my hands are shaking. I'm sweating. My eyeballs feel like they're like ping pong balls, like in my skull. Man, I must have, when I blinked, it felt like my eyes were blinking like a Pokemon cartoon character. I remember getting off the freeway. Like I was not in a safe driving operation. Mm-hmm. So I get off the freeway. I grab the bottle out of the center console and I spin around on the back to read the label to see what the contents were. And it's at that point that it said, the serving size is half of a can.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll just say, like most people, well, the product's not sold anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, they took it off the market.
Yeah, because I think what it is most people don't look at something and be like, you know what, I really should read the back of this super small can to see what the actual serving size is. It doesn't even computer make any sense.
Yeah, but I mean, they should just make a serving. Like, you can sell a smaller bottle, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure what it is they're figuring that maybe they can market it better if it's two servings when you could buy a super tall can of Monster and that's one serving, all that liquid, or you can buy this smaller can and it's more like, I guess would be equivalent to like taking a shot. I know it's more than a shot of Red Line, but essentially, you only have to drink a little bit of liquid and you're good to go.
And during college, I don't remember how I actually found this, but somebody made a comment about, you've got a marathon studying session. And then this is right when I'm like deep in physics courses and engineering courses. And they're like, oh, dude, this is like those times you grab a bottle of No-Dos and, a couple energy drinks and just, stay up and crank through things on the whiteboard. And I remember That sounds like a good idea. Man, it was like 4:00 in the morning, and I had like stereos pumping in my bedroom, and I just remember I was highly productive. But man, that come down was the stuff legend.
Yeah, most it come down from stimulants is not fun. I don't care if it's illegal drugs or legalized energy drinks.
Yeah.
When I was in college, it was always coffee. That's all I drank to stay awake if I needed to stay up late and get a bunch of shit done. I never drifted towards the energy drinks. And I think primarily the reason why is when I think I first had a Monster, I don't recall it really giving me any energy. It just tasted like a really shitty soda, and it did very little for me. And that's maybe the reason why I even tried Redline when somebody recommended it, because I was like, well, there's got to be something that actually works. That does work. But I think that was after I got my bachelor's degree. So I didn't need to, cram all night long.
Right.
But when I was in college, it was always coffee. It was just the default. I don't know why, other than coffee worked for me, I didn't think energy drinks did. And so I questioned whether or not even energy drinks had anything in them that really was that powerful. It just tasted like shitty soda. I'd rather drink a cup of coffee. I felt like I was getting, if not the same exact thing, probably even more out of a cup of coffee than I was getting out of a big ass can of Monster.
Well, I think like anything in life, it's like, well, if you like this, then you'll most likely like that. And so I'd say this is probably about the year 1998, 1999. At the time, there were like weightlifting, bodybuilding type supplement stores, but there was kind of a rare thing. Like GNC was really the only place.
Yeah, GNC is the only one I can recall. I'm sure there were independent ones, but that was the one that I always saw around.
Right,
town.
and I remember going there and getting a big bottle of Rip Fuel, and then the person that was working there was like, "Hey, if you really like this stuff, you should try." And there's like a white plastic tub called Ultimate Orange.
Oh God!
And it basically tasted like a Sunny D or Sunny Delight, but it was probably like 350 milligrams of caffeine and with with ephedrine in it. And I remember I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'm just gonna take. I looked at the side and it said serving size is 1 scoop. I'm like, sounds good to me.
Right.
And
did you put 2 in?
No. Well, actually, I want to say I did like a giant heaping scoop.
Okay.
Threw it in some water, and about 30 minutes later, I just could feel my skin crawling, and it felt like the hair on my head was on fire. And I was headed to the gym, and then I had one of the best workouts of my life that day. I didn't feel so hot when I left. And my workout was so good that I had a mental note that I need to leave the gym because I'd been there for 2 hours, and my sets, maybe would be like 12, 15 reps. And all of a sudden we're like 35 reps a set. And I just kept adding weight to the point I'm like, okay, this is just getting weird. If I'm looking on the outside of myself at what's going on, this person's on drugs.
Well, technically, I think you probably are.
Yes, over the counter, totally legal. But there is another one. Are you familiar with C.T. Fletcher? He's a bodybuilder coach, motivational speaker.
No, the only bodybuilder I know of is Flex Wheeler. And that's because he's from,
He's from here.
Yeah, he's from here. So I don't really pay attention to the bodybuilding competition, sports. I don't know. What do you call it? Is it a sport?
I think it's a sport for sure. But there's...
Yeah, I just don't pay attention to the world of bodybuilding a whole lot. So I don't know those people outside of I know Arnold Schwarzenegger did it, So outside of the major movie stars that...
I'll have to send you some C.T. Fletcher stuff. He's a great motivational speaker, a really cool life story. They call him the Compton Superman.
Okay.
He's probably now in his mid 70s, but he became a personal trainer down in the L.A. Compton area and became hugely successful. Big social media personality.
Okay.
And then I'm going to say this is probably like 2016, 2017. He came out with his own product line of supplements, and I like everything this guy is saying. He gets me pumped and I'm in the weight room listening to him kind of talk and, motivate me through my sets and whatnot. He had a pre-workout that was called the Sidewalk Cracker. And what it means, like, you got so big And so you put on so much weight that when you would walk on the sidewalk, you're actually putting cracks and dents in the concrete.
I'm thinking it's like, sidewalk crackers. You're talking about white people?
I think it was a double entendre, something like that. But sidewalk cracker, I think, is one of the best pre-workouts I ever took. And I had multiple amazing workouts. And then I ran out of it and I went back online to order it. Product's gone, man. FDA must have stepped in and said, this is basically like speed that you're putting into this plastic container. So I'm an aficionado of all of these different products.
Yeah,
so,
I don't dabble in that. I go to the gym regularly, but I've never tried to put on weight or muscle. Just tone up and stay in shape. And I don't know if I said this on a previous podcast, or I probably just said it to you. I kind of use Brad Pitt in Fight Club as like pretty much like what I would want to look like, just toned up and in good shape, not necessarily big. I've never had a desire to do that. So when I started going to the gym, and I've been going to the gym since I was in my 20s, and I've been pretty consistent throughout my life. And I've had a lot of friends that, definitely gym guys, go to the gym, and they were always about, putting on, weight and getting bigger and bigger. And they used to buy those big ass tubs of shit, and that is expensive. But they would come back with, from GNC with these things, and it was like Rip Fuels one I remember. There's a bunch of them, and I'm just like, nah, nothing I would ever do. So that's not my bag of tricks. But I can see the draw to the ones that give you energy.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And then there's the non-stim versions or non-stimulant, no caffeine, like vascular pump type pre-workouts. And I don't know, for me, that's fake news. If I really want to get after it and be motivated and flip Suburbans in the parking lot, I need the real stuff.
Well, yeah, I don't understand why you would, what's the point of the non-stimulant, version of that stuff? I mean, if it gives you that extra energy, to go into the gym and hit it, which I think it would be required. I don't know if it's required. I mean, everybody's different, but I feel like for me, I don't need motivation, but I'm not upping my weight constantly, to go to that next level, and you might need that. I lift mostly, light weights. There's nothing like super strenuous. So I don't feel like I need to get like massively, jacked up on stimulants to go in there and just like pyramid, weightlifting where we're starting at 100 pounds, but by the time we're done, we're lifting 1,500.
Right.
Yeah. And you need all that, extra energy. I don't do shit like that.
What about, extra fuel in the tank for when you hit your posing routine in the mirror?
No, I don't need none of that.
No?
Man. Mainly because I don't pose in the mirror.
I figured you had your own pair of trunks and one of those like string tank tops,
Right, oil yourself up. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Hit the tanning salon, get like mega dark, and then oil yourself up and just start posing.
I think they use a couple of friends of mine competed, not currently, but where you'd have to put on like surgical gloves and have a buddy rub you down with iodine, I think is what they use.
For what? What is that for?
It's like a fake tanner.
Oh, okay, so because I know
gives you that weird orange.
Yeah. Well, because muscles look more defined when you're darker skinned, right?
Correct.
So yeah. So you gotta put that shit on so that you look more buff than you are.
So has there ever been a time on, since you're not an aficionado, but maybe unknowingly got overstimulated?
Well, I mean, there was a couple times that I drank espresso. Going off the idea that I'm drinking coffee to stay awake, or maybe I got some kind of project due in college and coffee isn't going to cut it. I would take it to espresso, and I'd done espresso a couple times, not really understanding what that was. I knew it was stronger, but they came in such small amounts that I remember one time drinking like 5 or 6 of those things, and it was not like all at once. It was over a fairly short period of time. Okay. Yeah, and that fucked me up.
Were your hands shaking?
I was definitely wired. I had a hard time actually thinking because we were putting together something, and I was, it's like almost like it's like kind of like, obviously I wasn't watching YouTube, but it felt like when you're watching YouTube, it's like you're just going from video to video.
Yep.
I'm sort of like doom scrolling, I guess, where it's like I'm trying to do something and I get easily distracted with something else. The next thing I know, right? I'm over here doing this. I'm like, I can't concentrate on this fucking thing I'm doing. So yeah, I've had those experiences. The only time I've honestly ever been overstimulated is when I did cocaine, you know, or getting, you know, fucked up on drugs. That's, you know, I've had a couple of nights where, you know, you do a line of cocaine and you're like, okay, that's good. And so a second one might be fine. And then all of a sudden you're down a rabbit hole where it's like, you look at the clock and you say, well, like, I'll do a line, it's only 8 o'clock. I'll do a second line, it's only 9 o'clock. I'll do a third line, it's only 10 o'clock. And it's like, well, I'm going to do one more, I'll do it at 10:30, and that's it. But by that point, you're bought and sold.
Oh,
like,
yeah. When the sun's coming up in the morning, you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah, totally. And, you know, again, people are either stimulant, you know, directed, or I think they're more depressant directed. And I've never been stimulant directed. So I've had a couple of nights in my life where I partied like that, and then it's the hell the next day. It's bad.
Yep.
You know, it is super bad for anybody that's never done it. The come down off these drugs is
brutal.
just is absolutely brutal. The one thing I always notice about cocaine, and I'm sure it's the same with meth, and I've done methamphetamine as well, but definitely not like I did cocaine. And I would say even in my life with cocaine, I probably did it, you know, and this was in my 20s, when I was in a band. This stuff was kind of floating around Los Angeles and people are doing it. I'm going to quantify it in terms of lines. In my entire life, I've probably done somewhere between 100 to 200 lines of cocaine, right? So, but meth, I think I've done that maybe 2 or 3 times. And that stuff lit me up in a way that I wouldn't do it all night long. Like, I did it once and I'm like, whoa, this is way another level of stimulant.
Did it make you want to buy a chopper?
No, to be honest with you, I can't remember exactly what it really made me want to do. Initially, it had similar qualities to cocaine. You know, it made everything a little more interesting. People are conversating, you're having a good time. But it quickly spirals into you don't. This is how I would describe it. And cocaine does the same thing if you do enough of it. Nothing feels comfortable. You can't.
That's fair.
You can't do anything, but you can't not do anything. And you're just in that state, and it's maddening. I think this is where people who use this stuff long term become suicidal, and they become extremely depressed, and may not even have a specific reason to feel that way. You just feel that way,
right? And
that's definitely the come down feels like that. So when I dealt with methamphetamine, it didn't draw me in at all. I couldn't even understand the concept of why people would want to do this. You know, again, I think it's an addictive thing. It obviously is addictive, and if you're more into stimulants, I can see people graduating from maybe doing cocaine to meth, or they start using meth because it was a lot cheaper than cocaine. And at least when I was growing up, this, you know, pre-internet era, and this is most of the time I was doing this type of stuff, so it would have been like the mid-90s into the late 90s. I don't think people really understood that there's a difference between the two drugs.
Yep.
It was close enough. And I think people thought like, well, methamphetamine is kind of just poor man's cocaine, but they are radically different drugs. And it's definitely two different kinds of highs, two different kinds of come downs. They're similar, but meth is absolutely the devil's drug. I wouldn't, you know, I've never done heroin, but I have to put it up there with destructiveness has to be on par with opiates.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, you know, in trailer parks, it ravages communities because, yeah, when it's not like you do it once and you're hooked for life type of a thing, but then you're like, oh, that was a really good time. And then then it becomes part of your routine, unfortunately. So, yeah, it definitely takes a toll on communities, and, you know, also taking, I think, away, you know, intrinsic moral values, you know, just in the act of tracking it down and kind of the people that are around it. And then, you know, if you give up something of your own principles here, it's really easy to give up something over there. And I think that's where, you know, unfortunately, good people can make a decision like that and then in a very short time period end up as somebody completely different.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
I think definitely the one thing about stimulants, we're talking about drugs. There's something inherently worse about any drug that denies you primary things that you need. Methamphetamine and cocaine will kill your appetite. You won't eat. You won't sleep. These are things you inherently need. And I think that that's where the psychosis really starts to come into play, is you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're living on this stuff. And I think when you think about alcohol or marijuana use, and people would take years to get addicted to these things, and I think it takes a long time for it to become like just horribly destructive to you. So like alcoholics, I really do believe it takes probably 5 to 10 years to really get so deep into alcohol that you are absolutely a wreck. Like, you're just a physical mess. You can't hold a job. All your relationships are destroyed. Methamphetamine, you're going to do that in 2 to 3 years. Probably easily. And it could be sooner. Yeah, it could be even sooner than that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, when stimulants in general, like I've never really been drawn to them. The times that I've done, things to stay awake has always been leaning on obviously things like coffee and espressos and things like that. But again, it's never really been my bag. So it's not something that I've ever really been drawn to. Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that was totally in my wheelhouse because, like I say, from an early age, and I know you and I've talked about this before, and I'm glad I've gone through this whole phase of my life, and I understand addiction because I have a very addictive personality.
Yeah.
If 1 is good, 10 is great.
Right. Of course.
And then if you have certain means to do something, then it's like, well, if I can do that, then I can do this. And if I can do that, then I'm going to level up over here. And then I'm going to take it to this limit that nobody's ever seen before. So I'm thankful that I've had those old experiences because now families share with me, struggles that they're going through. It's given me a new perspective on being able to empathize.
Sure.
Where I don't think not having those experiences and hearing those same stories, you just feel like, oh, that's a shame. I hope it really works out for you guys.
Yeah.
Or, I'll pray for you type of a thing.
Yeah.
Versus like, dude, I totally get it, man. I really do get it.
Right. Yeah. I think I don't have a specific addictive personality, but my addictive personality is always leaned towards, the depressants. I mean, I smoked weed religiously until I was probably 30 and just got high all the time.
You watch cartoons?
And we did all kinds of stuff. Mostly we just played music. I always thought that marijuana opened up like some kind of creative portal that I wouldn't be able to access without, using, marijuana. And I never consciously tried to quit. I quit because when I started working in the Bay Area for the Oakland Tribune, those people, no one smoked weed. I get it's the Bay Area. I think like everybody's getting high, but I'm talking about the journalists, like that community. They didn't smoke weed. They drank heavily and they smoked cigarettes like, nobody's business. But they didn't really get high. So the people I was around all the time, they weren't smoking weed. And okay, this is the early 2000s, so it wasn't legal yet. Well, I think it might have been, maybe it was medicinal at that point. I'm not really sure. But it just wasn't around. So I wasn't smoking it. And it just one day I realized, oh my God, it's been a year since I've gotten high. Just didn't stop doing it. Then when I did get high again, by this time, it's becoming more legal, and the shit that they got is way too fucking potent.
Yeah.
And it's nothing I liked. So I'd smoke it, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not cool with this. This is not something I would do. And so, you could say like, well, I guess I was addicted to marijuana, but maybe I really wasn't. I really don't know, and I really don't know how addictive marijuana is. The flip side is alcohol. I mean, I've had bouts of alcoholism for forever, and I've gone into periods of my life where I was drinking every day. And now I would describe that as being like, oh, I'd come home and have, 3 or 4 beers, not like I'm drinking, a case.
Or like a handle or something.
Yeah. So, but on the weekends, then I would probably get fairly lit. But then you look at the totality of what I was doing. I'm drinking pretty much every day. And then on Friday and Saturdays, I'm drinking probably to excess. So at some point you're like, okay, you got to stop doing that.
Right.
And that's, if there was any struggle, that struggle probably is the biggest struggle I've ever had. But even then, compared to like full-blown alcoholics, I'm not even probably in the same league as them, even at my heaviest periods where I was drinking a lot.
Right. No, and I think it's, there's a lot of good things about what we're talking about right now, because most, I know I'm going to paint with a pretty broad brush here, but like most men won't talk about things like feelings or struggling through addiction issues or something like that. It's, this cross that you're going to bear internally and just try and white knuckle it through life type of a thing. So I think it's good to share these types of stories, and it's a lot more common than people think. And that's why when I was thinking of like, well, there's been on these overstimulated adventures, I certainly have some pretty wild stories that I don't know that are fit for this podcast.
Come on. I just talked about cocaine use and methamphetamine use. Come on, Joe. It's okay to talk about your feelings.
Right. It's
okay to talk about your struggles.
Things can be a very slippery slope because, once it's like, well, if you're going to slam down 3 Yellow Jackets, and, a 6-pack of Red Bull, like, taking smoking meth off of a piece of aluminum foil is not that far of a jump away.
I never smoked meth. I was around people that did that. That always blew my mind. I'm like, why would you do that? You could snort a line of meth. But again, that was enough for me. It's all that graduation, like when people talk about, people who shoot drugs,
right.
I don't think that it's not, how do I say this? I don't think it's a choice. They're saying like, oh, they're snorting it, they're smoking it, and then they're shooting it, and they're just having to choose to use the needle. It's gradual. They start snorting it, and that's maybe not doing the same as it used to do, so they have to get it a little bit harder.
Yep.
You smoke it, it will hit you a little bit harder and a little bit faster, and when that doesn't get you to where you want to be, then you graduate to shooting it. So I think that's typically the process of how that works.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it's, these things that happen and, back in the late 90s, it's, again, it's good, 25 years later that I've had those stories. Cause again, I can empathize where if I hadn't have gone through those types of things, it's, I'd hear those same struggles that people have and I'd be like, I hope it works out, but that's all I got for you.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's like, you know what? I've been there, man. You stay awake for a week. It's not fun. There's no trophies to be won for those things.
Yeah. I know people that have done that. That's so far out of my wheelhouse. Like after a night of partying on stimulants, even if it was just coffee and you're up all night, like I can't imagine continuing. Like my body felt like it was over. Even if my brain said like, yeah, let's keep this thing going, my body was like not having it. I felt like absolute shit. And it's just like, there's no way. But there were dudes that I knew, like, it'd be 6, 7 in the morning. They've been partying all night long and they're still, breaking out drugs and they're doing it. I'm just like, I don't know how the fuck you guys are even functioning. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that.
Cleaning the grout in the kitchen tile at, 4 in the morning with a toothbrush and not getting it, quote fingers here, clean enough.
Right.
And then you realize like some real bad shenanigans are happening.
Yeah, and the only other thing I've ever seen on the flip side of those types of hard drugs is alcohol. People that are absolutely, the biggest alcoholics. I know a dude, his name's Sandy, and he hangs out kind of in the areas I hang out at, and I don't think I've ever seen him sober. And I'm talking about like, you can meet somebody that, he's had a few, you can maybe he's a little bit loose.
Right.
This guy is slurry drunk every time I've seen him. And I've never seen him sober. And I've just known this guy for 10 years. Like I say, he's not a friend of mine. He's a guy that hangs out in various kind of bars that I frequent. Yeah. And he's always out there. And it's like, when did you start? Like, obviously you didn't start at the bar because you walk in here and you're already shit-faced. So you must be drinking at home before you even come out. But I start to think that this guy probably is never really sober. Isn't there a point when you drink that, what's it called, wet brain or something? Where
I haven't heard of that one.
Where it's like, I think if you're such an alcoholic that even when alcohol kind of escapes your system or finally runs through your system, that you're still, you're just like that. And it just continues.
Well, it's, I'm an early riser. I get up at 4:50 every morning, and I don't really have anything to do per se. It's just I'm a creature of habit and routine, and I'm much more of a morning person than a night person. But when I run errands in the morning and I drive past the Brig, which is a bar here in town, it's open at 6 a.m.
Yeah, Hook and Ladder's open at 6 a.m. too.
And it's packed.
Yeah.
And that, whenever I drive by, I always look over at it. I'm like, man, that is so sad. I'm all for having a great time, letting it rip, letting it all hang out and whatnot. But yeah, getting hammered at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday is not, there's meetings for things like that.
Well, so I'll tell you a little bit about the Hook and Ladder and the Brig and these 6 a.m. bars. It's wild. first and foremost, a friend of mine's father works at the Brig. He bartends there. He's been there forever, I guess.
You'd have to be.
Right. So the first time I had seen that 6 a.m. thing, my first thought was like, how much of an alcoholic do you have to be? And it seemed weird to me. It was almost like you're opening a bar with the idea that we cater to probably people who really need help. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
But that's not the case. I was told, I went to the Hook and Ladder. It was after the end of a school year. So a bunch of teachers decided to go out to the Hook and Ladder, and it says, opens at 6 a.m. And I'm just like, who the hell? Like, I don't get this. The Brig does this.
Mm-hmm.
And the bartender at the Hook and Ladder says like, well, no, you're misunderstanding what the whole 6 a.m. thing is. And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, well, we open at 6 because not everybody works like these 9-to-5 jobs. So most of the people you see at the bar at 6 a.m. are people who work very odd schedules. So to them, that 6 a.m. is their 5 p.m. So that's why we're open at 6 a.m. Those are. She told me, was like, that's everybody that's in that bar at 6 a.m. There might be some exceptions at 6 a.m, but these are people who got off work at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. So this is their happy hour to them. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You're not buying any.
I'm not buying any of that, man.
Come on,
I don't disagree. There's a lot of people that work graveyard and swing shift and all that kind of stuff, and they're and sleep during the day. I totally get that, but I don't know. It just seems like in the times that I pass by there, I don't recognize every single car. But I'm like, is that red Oldsmobile? Was that there yesterday and the day before that?
And you're probably true. You're probably right. It's probably true to a certain extent, but you have to consider that, like, let's say you assume that, you work those kinds of shifts. Would you just simply never drink?
Well, then I think we're down a whole different rabbit trail, because then there's the people that, like, I don't go to bars to drink. If I'm gonna have a couple cocktails.
We'll just say you.
But if I did, I mean, I don't know, man. Then you get into the whole like, dude, it's a Tuesday, it's a Wednesday, Thursday. I see you there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like, do you work and just give your paycheck to the bar at that point? Like, again, I'm all for having a good time responsibly. I don't know about 6 a.m. drinking though.
I just think it's perspective. I think that if your shift is like that, I can see how your 6 a.m. is, my 5 p.m. Mm-hmm. But also it depends. Again, you're saying you don't go to bars, but I think if people, let's say that you worked a 9 to 5 and you're a kind of person that goes to happy hour, you have 2 or 3 drinks and you socialize with a bunch of people, and then you land a job and this is your new schedule, you might be inclined to say, well, I am going to go to the bar at 6 a.m. and you're probably going to see a lot of the same people. And it becomes like its own community and its own crowd.
Okay, so I actually have a really good kind of counter to that. So some very good friends of ours own a liquor store. And at dinner one night, I was asking them, when you go to check out at any liquor store and they have those like little tiny bottles of liquor of like vodka, bourbon, whatever.
Mini bottles.
Yeah, whatever. 99 bananas.
Yeah, that's always seems to be the 99 bananas. Always seems to be in that pile.
Yes, and they usually even have like buy 5 get the next 10 free or some nonsense. And so I asked him, I'm like, how many people buy those? And he's like, honestly, that's one of the biggest cash grabs that our stores have. Mm-hmm. And it's all teachers and nurses that come in right when they open and will bring in coffee cups. And he's like, dude, I'm standing right there and they're pouring, they're in their scrubs, or, they work at, XYZ Unified School District, and they're going to their jobs.
That's crazy.
And I was like, is this like a onesie twosie things? He's like, oh no, it's like a regular parade of people Monday through Friday. It's not the same person. It's many people that do that. And I'm like, it's why I really can empathize with people that struggle through addiction. But that's just bananas, man, to take those steps and then to show up to work and try and play it off all day long. I teach, and I've taught for 20 years at the high school level and taught college, but I would never ever. Doesn't even sound fun.
Yeah, none of that
terrifying.
Yeah, but I'm going to say, as a teacher, I understand why somebody might do that. It's definitely a tough gig, and some people are built for it, some people aren't. And if you're not built to do this kind of work, you might find yourself, dumping a bottle of, booze and some coffee before you go to class. I mean, the ultimate risk is if you do enough of it, I'm not sure one bottle is going to alter you to a point where it would be detectable, or you would even be ineffective, or you would be drunk in class. But I'm assuming if you're doing it in the morning, you're probably doing it during your break, during your lunch, or whatever. There was a teacher at one of the local high schools. There was a guy that I had when I was in high school. He was an older cat. And I would see him hanging out at one of the local breweries every day after school when I started teaching. And so I'd see him like, hey, you may not remember me. I used to be a student of yours back in the day, whoop-de-woo. And, we would talk. But he would be at the bar, and he would, every day, I'd see him, well, not every, because I didn't go every day, but every time I went, and I was going probably 3 times a week to this place. Okay. And, getting, after school happy hour, they have like sliders. Everything's like super discounted, so you can get like a beer and a full dinner for like, at that time, it was like less than $10. And so this was, this is 15, 20 years ago. And he ended up getting in trouble for being drunk at school. They even pulled him out of the classroom, gave him a DUI.
Walk the line?
Yeah, a field sobriety test in front of his classroom. The cops show up. Yeah. And he apparently, the story goes, this wasn't not at my school. This is obviously at a different school, but I heard the story was essentially he was teaching a class, and he started becoming like verbally abusive towards the kids, like in a drunk way. Like, let me tell you something about you that you don't know, you little like that kind of like that drunk, obnoxious, anger. And a kid, I kind of go to the restroom, and he went to the office and said, hey, something's wrong. I'm not going to say his name, with Mr. So-and-so. And the administration shows up, and they find a empty bottle of rum in his little wastebasket underneath his desk. He didn't even have the sense to dispose of stuff properly. Like, I would have thrown that like an outside garbage can at least, or pour the rum into some nondescript bottle and take it to school or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I can kind of understand that. I think it's absolutely insane. You should be fired if you are taking shots of 99 bananas before you hit the classroom.
Yeah. The one when so these friends that own these stores, that was really shocking when he was like, oh yeah, the majority of them are doctors and nurses. I'm like, and they're going to the hospital? That part I can't.
Yeah, that's scary to me.
I can't fathom.
That's scary to me. And I understand that some of these jobs become so routine, and you do certain things over and over again that it becomes automatic. So from a perspective, I'm not a nurse, so I look at it going like, that seems scary to me. Like, you're sticking needles in me, or you're doing all this stuff, and now you're getting wasted. I don't know if they're getting wasted, but they're drinking at least, right? But if these sort of routines, they've done it over and over again, it becomes, again, automatic. My perspective might be a little skewed. That doesn't mean I think it's okay, but you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I would probably be more worried about that, not knowing what they do every day, versus if I was a nurse and understood, like, these things that they're doing, it's like just automatic to them. It's standard routine. And I could say the same about teaching to a certain extent, although I think teaching is a little more, loose. Every day you go to class, the vibe could be slightly different, and how you handle things, and you have to adjust. I'm sure drinking is the best thing to be doing in a classroom.
Yeah. Bad idea. On a 1 to 10 scale, it's a 0. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But I do miss the good old days of ephedrine, though.
Right. Look at you. How did we start with coffee and espresso and end up people getting drunk in class and drinking before they go to their nursing job?
Right. Well, I think a lot of that stuff kind of goes hand in hand. If you do this, you probably do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh.
So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
And we've concluded another episode of the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac. And I think the moral of the story is don't do drugs.
Right. Or, have a beer, but just have one.
Yes.
And not before class.
No. 99 bananas is something that should not be available to the general public.
Nope.